In the National Hockey League, you can either complain and say you'll do better next time, or you grind the tape and figure out what went wrong. On today's edition of Locked On Oilers, a breakdown of why the Oilers lost Game 1 to the Dallas Stars.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my second Stanley Cup playoffs as host of Locked On Oilers. This is my third NHL season with the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been doing digital hockey content for 10 years now, which is a crazy thing to say out loud. I couldn't be happier that you're here on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend down here in the States, ahead of game number 2 between the Edmonton Oilers and Dallas Stars. And on today's jam-packed show, we have a whole lot to get to, but first, I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on today's show, we are going to walk through some lessons from game number 1 that we can better apply to game number 2. In our first segment, I got the dry erase board, the famous Locked On Oilers dry erase board, to walk through the first play that really set the tone, the Draisaitl goal, how it comes together, why it works well against the Stars, why it's a dangerous play, and that the Oilers do have to run it, I would say, conservatively and tactically, because it's such a volatile play, in the respect that it could spring the other team going in the opposite direction. In our second segment, I want to hone in on the power play a little bit and talk about what worked on the Nugent-Hopkins goal and figure out how the Oilers can better apply some of these concepts to their power play, which has struggled. And then in our final segment, we're going to dive into just what the Oilers didn't do defensively down the stretch in this game and what they might be able to do better. So to start things out, everydayers have heard me talk about this a lot this year, and it's one of my favorite concepts to explain because it's really interesting when you break it down on a granular level. So one of the tenets of effective offense, regardless of the sport, is putting defensive players in conflict. When we're talking about hockey, that doesn't just mean defensemen, that means forwards on the other team in the defensive zone as well, and it can be applied underneath that uniform term of defense. So when we're talking about team defense, there are generally 2 concepts, and some teams implement both variations of it depending on where the puck is in the given zone. In the case of the Dallas Stars, that is the case. Above the circles, they're a man-on-man team, and then if the puck gets below a certain point, it transitions to more of a zone and guys trying to section off parts of the ice as their defensive responsibility. So with that in mind, to establish why the Draisaitl goal is so creative and why it's so interesting, I'm going to pull out our little dry erase board here. So this play starts with Leon Draisaitl in possession of the puck at the top of the offensive zone with Wyatt Johnston on him, John Klingberg at the top of the circle, Jason Robertson fading in his direction, but not entirely on him. You have Nurse up here at one point. You have McDavid on the opposite side. You have Hyman at the net front. Duchesne is following McDavid. This Dallas defender is with Hyman. This Dallas defenseman is floating, but likely going to play whichever one of these 2 players cuts down. So this play is really interesting in that it puts multiple Dallas defenders in conflict, and it's ultimately why it works. So the way this play comes together, Leon is here, McDavid is here. McDavid fills in this way towards the center of the ice. Leon leaves him the puck right here in this general area, and Leon circles back around. Leon comes this way, and he's still in the offensive zone. Connor, with possession, passes this puck to Nurse and starts to skate inward. When McDavid skates inward from this general area, I'm going to grab a blue marker here to continue the play so you can follow me. So Leon leaves this puck here. Connor's fading this way. Leon circles all the way around. Connor has this puck in the center of the ice, but he cuts ever so slightly. And in cutting towards the center lane, he pulls Lindell towards him and Duchesne towards him. Johnston tries to stay with Leon. This puck, which McDavid has, he passes up here to Nurse. Leon is coming around, and Leon receives the pass somewhere in this general area, and he goes all the way around. Why this play is effective is because he creates a moving pick effectively. because Connor, after he moves this puck to Nurse, Nurse moves it to Leon. Leon cuts this way. McDavid is cutting towards the center lane here. And in doing that, he makes himself a moving pick where both Johnston and Robertson need to get around McDavid. But because they can't do that, Leon has the inside lane. Leon skates the entire perimeter of the zone, goes all the way down, gets the puck on his forehand right about here-ish from Connor, who's cutting inward. This pulls all of these defensive players into McDavid's general area. Because McDavid garners so much attention, as I like to say, he has his own gravitational pull in the offensive zone. Because of that, it puts this Dallas defense in extreme conflict because they either need to cut to the middle to try and cut off Connor from receiving the pass to Leon. And ultimately, Leon is able to rip this on the opposite side, the far side. And all three of the Oiler goals on this game come on the far side of Jake Ottinger. So why that play works, again, you have Johnston, you have Robertson, you have Lindell, all in this general area. You have Labushkin here as well. Hyman is just here to garner traffic. Duchesne is following McDavid. Johnston is following Draisaitl. Robertson is following one of these two, whether it's Klingberg or Nurse. It doesn't really matter a whole lot for the abstract, but in pulling inward the way McDavid does, where he receives that pass, comes around, comes towards the middle of the ice, he leaves it for Nurse, and as he comes down, he pulls two or three guys towards him. Those three guys are all preoccupied with Connor. Leon gets the pass from Nurse on his way in. Leon skates it down the wall and goes around everyone. And McDavid's pulling guys this way. So that puts Leon basically in a one-on-one with Jake Ottinger, and he beats him to that far side. Now, plays like this are dangerous in the respect that there's a lot that can go wrong. And I do want to emphasize that. I talk about that a lot, where the Oilers are at their most dangerous is these passes at the top of the offensive zone, because it is the most sensitive area of possession. It's when you first establish the zone or when you're trying to work your plays, because when you're operating along the blue line, you run the risk of going off sides, you run the risk of a turnover. And because of that, and you saw it, the Stars were able to convert on two separate turnovers in this game. Because of that, it's a double-edged sword. It creates opportunities for space because you can get conflict going on lower in the zone, and you can generally pull defenders outwards towards the point, and that creates more space down low. And in this case, you create a ton of conflict over here. In this case, you put all of these guys in a position where they need to make a determination. Do I go with Connor McDavid cutting towards the middle of the ice with Zach Hyman, who's going to have a 2-on-2 down low? Do I want to follow Leon? Well, if I want to follow Leon, I got to get through McDavid because McDavid's body is physically in that space. So these types of plays, putting defenders in conflict, making them make decisions, that's really where the Oilers, especially their high-end players like Connor, like Leon, are going to be able to outthink. And that's what makes guys like Connor and Leon special hockey players. It's not that they're necessarily smarter than everyone else, but they see the game happening faster. You know, it's like when you start to understand the learning curve in a video game, like if you're playing MLB The Show, you start to understand how fastball and slider look coming out of the pitcher's hand, so the tunneling effect doesn't work you as much. It's the same general principle here. You're thinking this multiple steps ahead because Connor and Leon are operating in two circles, because Leon has this puck, he sends it to Connor. Connor starts to move it inward, moves it to Nurse. Draisaitl circles all the way back around, receives the pass from Nurse. Draisaitl goes the long way around. McDavid's cutting inward. Hyman's over here as well. That's pulling guys. And because Draisaitl goes all the way around, he has more opportunities. And it's one of those plays that's not going to work every time. You know, it worked against them on the Tyler Seguin breakaway because they ran that play at the top of the offensive zone where they tried to run a handoff and there wasn't a lot of room. Dallas's defenders were a bit more aggressive. They broke it up. They sprung the other way. So that was just one sequence that worked really well, and I thought was really unique in demonstrating how good Connor and Leon are. But we're going to take our first break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. And when we come back, I'm going to walk you through some of the problems the Oilers have had with their power play in the post. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, it made me aware of just how much I was spending on takeout. Now, I meal prep as part of my budgeting, I save more, and I plan ahead. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even set up long-term financial goals like a car, a vacation, or so many other things. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers ahead of Memorial Day weekend down here in the States and ahead of game number 2 between the Edmonton Oilers and Dallas Stars. And the deciding factor in game number 1 was special teams. I talked about it extensively on yesterday's edition of Locked On NHL with Hunter Hodes. The Oilers thoroughly controlled play at 5-on-5. They had a majority of the scoring chances, of the high danger chances, of the expected goals. And this game was swung on special teams where the Stars converted on 3 straight power plays and the Oilers only with a singular power play goal, which happened by and large by mistake. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what the Oilers try to do on the power play, what worked as far as why Nugent-Hopkins was so wide open on the goal he ultimately scored, and then tie into a little bit why the Oilers' power play has gone, I wouldn't say cold, but it isn't as lethal. It isn't as efficient as it was last year. And before I pull out the dry erase board again, it is worth noting, sometimes it really is just variance. Sometimes it really is just luck-based, because when you think about it, the Oilers last year in the playoffs, special teams wise, were the best overall team in the NHL. When you add up power play and penalty kill conversion rates, and that's not the most scientific way to do it because it doesn't account for the rate of which you acquire both, where the amount of power plays you draw, the amount of penalties you take, but just overall in terms of raw percentage, the Oilers operated on like a 92 for 96 rate on penalty kills in last year's playoffs, which was sublime. One of the best penalty kills in modern NHL playoff history, and their power play was pushing 30%. So to walk you through what this looks like conceptually, the Oilers have 2 main wrinkles they like to run. So the first play I have diagrammed here, this is what we like to call the backdoor. This is a way to get the puck to one of 2 players. Ideally, you want to get this puck to Leon down here. You want this one-timer on his strong side. So to facilitate that one-timer, to get the puck on Draisaitl's forehand at this sharp angle, where he might even be close to being on the goal line, and he's usually parallel to the goal line, you need this puck coming from one of 2 places. You need it coming from over here, the Nugent-Hopkins side. You need it coming from below the goal line, the McDavid way. And then the alternative, which they don't do as much because there's not as much space, if you can walk Bouchard down, or if McDavid goes all the way around, he will occasionally start to drive the net and then dish the puck to the short side this way. But the way this is set up right now, and what happened on that first goal, the first power play goal of the game for the Oilers, McDavid has the puck here along the wall. Generally speaking, McDavid is the fulcrum point of this power play. He's going to be the facilitator. And the Oilers have 2 good one-timers. They have Bouchard's .1, which of course isn't going to be as efficient or as quality of a look as Draisaitl's, because A, Draisaitl's a better shooter, and B, Draisaitl's in tighter to the net. But generally speaking, the best power plays in the NHL, they're operating with the big one-timer, whether that's, Ovechkin in his office, whether that's Kucherov on the half wall, even though Kucherov's a bit more of a facilitator than a shooter. But generally speaking, you're looking for a point. You're looking for a sharp angle one-timer from one of the 2 circles. Now, some teams, the Oilers do, where Bouchard's one-timer is a featured component of their power play. But the Oilers' ideal outcome here, if you're creating on the power play, is Draisaitl getting a one-timer. You got Hyman occasionally on the back door if the puck's on this side of the ice, or if you can leak Nuge down. So last night, McDavid is here-ish. He's down here along the half wall. He puts his back to the play, turns inward to get the puck on his forehand, and just flings it across. As hard as he can, it hits a Dallas defender's stick. It skips over. Instead of going back this way, which it would have if the Stars player had settled to play more, it gets across to Nuge, who's all alone. And this way, he's shooting to the opposite far side, and he beats Ottinger. Now, the other way the Oilers will try and create on the power play, and the main way we've seen them be successful this year, is the Leon one-timer. And like we were establishing at the start of this segment, to get this one-timer to work, the puck needs to be here or it needs to be up top. It's generally pretty difficult to occupy this area of the ice. And I know Connor can do it and get this puck here to here, but generally if Connor's here, this penalty killer is going to slip down. This penalty killer is going to slip to the net front. And the other part of this that I haven't really addressed yet, and we only have a few minutes left, so I probably should if I'm going to do a good job, is Dallas is a very aggressive penalty killing team. They have a number of forwards who are really high-end defensive players in Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Mikko Rantanen, in terms of their stick work, in terms of their skating ability, and they're able to break plays up and spring things to go back the other way. So the way I have this diagrammed, and generally how I would describe the Stars penalty kill, is a 1-1-2. The 2 being the defenders who are going to play closest to the net in a zone alignment. The highest defender, the 1, is going to be trying to pressure whoever has the puck at the high end of the ice. And this player is going to try and cut off. This player is trying to try and cut off. You're trying to split up the ice into 4 quadrants. And the way the Stars are effective at this is they're hyper aggressive and then they pull off. They're hyper aggressive and then they pull off, because you can't play that high, that intently for that extended period of a time when there's a numbers advantage. Yes, the Stars have the individual players capable of doing that more than, say, a more average or lower quality team, but you can't be over pressuring to the degree that you're turning it into a 4-on-3, because that's what the Oilers try and do. The Oilers are trying to get this game on the power play down here. You're trying to be inside the circles to the posts. You're generally, if the Oilers power play is working, and it was pretty good last year, it's good this year, not as good. You want to get the puck somewhere in between the hashes. You want to be attacking from a sharp angle, because that usually means the goalie's moving left to right. And that is probably the single biggest indicator of a successful power play, and something the Oilers have really struggled with at points in this postseason so far, is just making the goalie move, making the defenders move. You think about some of those power plays against the Golden Knights last round, where the Oilers would go the full 2 minutes without registering a shot on goal. This is a team that has 2 of the 5 best forwards in the league and 1 of the 5 best offensive defensemen in the entire league. So that's not going to cut it. And against the Stars team, who again is really talented, supremely talented, you need to find that next gear. And that gets back to one of the concepts you talked about in that first segment, the idea of creating conflict. How do we get defenders moving? How do we get goalies moving? Well, to get the goalie moving, you need to whip that pass cross team. And the Nugent-Hopkins goal is an example of that. Yes, he shoots against the grain because Ottinger's coming back across to his right and he shoots to the left. It's a good idea. In other cases, you're trying to get defenders moving. You're trying to create conflict, to make guys make mistakes, to get them out of position, because that's going to correlate with a better look. And that's your goal. You can't always score, even if you have a great look, but you want to create as many great looks as you can so you have an increased chance of converting one of those probabilities. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, I'm going to tackle a little bit of what the Oilers defense needs to do, and I'm going to tell you why the penalty kill really needs to start turning things around on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. So be sure to stick around. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. And real quick, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's gotten on board over the course of the last two-ish playoff runs, 13 months of me as the host of the show. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys and the support, the feedback, and just it makes doing this more fun. because I can talk to myself about hockey endlessly. I do. That's what my subconscious sounds like. It's just hockey reference going through various guys in my brain, thinking about them and their games. But I do want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Oilers a part of their routine, whether I'm there at the start of the day, on the way to work, in the gym, on your run, if you're like me and trying to get used to running before work. And it helps to have your routines. And if I'm in your routine, I want to say thank you, because I know that's a real commitment to spending time together. And not every podcast does the job. So to spend time with you it's greatly appreciated. It means a lot to me as a creator. Every now and then when I get the polite DM that isn't telling me to go harm myself or calling me a word that I can't say on the air, it is nice. Every now and then you do get one of those. And I want to appreciate the audience, because the audience is what makes doing shows like this fun. So to tie a bow on the Oilers Game 1 performance, there are two parts. Number one, I want to talk about the defense at large at 5-on-5 and then hone in on the penalty kills. So to start out, the Oilers played really good strategic defense for the first 40 minutes of this game. The keys to defense in the contemporary NHL are moving the puck as quick as you can, absorbing pressure when it does come, because it will come at some point. And then the dirty secret here, and Daryl Sutter said this a number of years ago, and it's become the truth. The best defensive teams in the NHL don't play a lot of defense. They only have a handful of sequences per game where they're in real peril. And one of the keys to that is being as effective as possible in transition. It is why I have loved the John Klingberg and Jake Wallman pairing as it's been assembled. I know they gave up the one rush opportunity to Tyler Seguin that ultimately resulted in a goal against. But by and large, Klingberg and Wallman are skill set wise the prototypical contemporary NHL defenseman, where they're mobile enough skaters. I think Wallman is probably the Oilers' best skating defenseman in terms of functionality, because in a straight line, Darnell Nurse is probably faster, but I think Wallman is able to use his skating a bit more strategically and put himself in a better position to make a play. And ultimately, that's the goal of being a good skater. You know, you want to be able to make the play on the puck and get to where you need to be. So, number one, the first thing the Oilers were doing a really nice job of when they had control of this game was offloading the Stars as they gained the zone. And I'm going to pull out the dry erase board again here. I haven't diagrammed anything, but I just want to show you visually what I'm talking about. So when a Stars player is attacking the ice, when they're gaining the zone with speed, they're trying to get to the dangerous areas. You want to attack the net front. You want to get the puck down low to the flanks where you have an opportunity to get the goalie moving, to get the defenders moving. What the Oilers were doing a really nice job of in the early stages of this game was, number one, they were back checking pretty well. The forwards were coming back and disrupting these entries and forcing guys to make plays faster than they probably wanted to. Number two, when it was a 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 and the numbers were reasonable, the Oilers defenders were doing a really nice job of corralling guys to the outside. And when you are able to cut these inside flanks off and force guys to the perimeter or to send it along, to move it along, if you have the transition defensemen that the Oilers do, like Wallman, like Klingberg, like Bouchard, I would even dare to say Troy Stecher is a pretty effective puck-moving defenseman. When you constantly are making those guys only have to move the puck and not actively play defense, it puts you in an advantageous position because you don't need as much to go right for you. The more defense you have to play, the more the other team is wearing you down. Eventually, you're going to take a penalty, or they're going to score a goal, or they're going to generate a really good look that could be a goal. And your goal in the NHL today is to play as little defense as possible. And the Oilers have built a defensive group that's pretty amicable to what we want to see in today's NHL. Ideally, you would like to see Matthias Ekholm draw in. It was reported on Thursday that Ekholm would not be available for game 2. It's unclear if he'll be available for game 3, but there's reasonable suspicion or doubt, maybe, depending on what word you want to use, that he's going to be able to go back when we get up to Alberta for game 3 or 4. I would love to see Ekholm play, but of course, the defense really hasn't been the issue. So if, of course, you want to get Ekholm in, but at the same time, you don't need to feel rushed that the defense is a leaky sieve that's sinking the team. If anything, the Oilers' penalty kill is. And that's where I could understand the argument for wanting to get Ekholm back sooner rather than later. And look, I would love if there were a world where the Oilers could go 11-7 and basically only use Ekholm on the penalty kill and in really important defensive situations, very similarly to what the Stars did, easing Miro Heiskanen back into the lineup. That would be nice, especially considering the Oilers are playing a forward like 8 minutes a game. Are those 8 Trent Frederic minutes worth it when you could divide those up between other guys? And look, I think Trent Frederic has more to give. On yesterday's show, I said the Oilers should go back to the forward permutations they had in the Kings series, late in the Kings series, early in the Vegas series, where Frederic was playing with Adam Henrique and with Connor Brown, and they were doing a really nice job of creating rush opportunities, of absorbing defensive pressure and counterattacking, forechecking as well, because Frederic is such a strong forechecker because of his skating. But by and large, the Oilers' penalty kill is getting caught looking. And what I mean by that is, if the puck is on this side of the ice, like what happened on the Granlund goal, Granlund is leaking on the backside because they're running a 2 and a 2. They're running 2 layers of 2. And because of that, it's natural they're going to shift towards puck side because you're trying to break up the passing lanes. You keep that diagonal, that wedge shape, and you get your sticks in the lane. You try and break them up. But because the Oilers' penalty kill, A, just hasn't been lucky, and B, is cold, they don't have a great feel for where they need to be in the zone. And they are getting caught with too many guys on one side, and that backdoor leak this time of year is dangerous. And I want to leave you with this parting thought. In the playoffs, this stage of the playoffs, I should say, the best players have the capacity to swing games by themselves. Now, Mikko Rantanen, relatively quiet in game number 1. That will not be the case for the entire series. I need to see the Oilers find a way to be smoother on the penalty kill and stop with the dumb penalties. It's one thing if you take a penalty you need to take. If you hook someone who's about to get a breakaway on a goalie, okay, I can live with that. But the high sticks, the interferences, the roughings, the cross checks, those are details. Those are discipline. Finding that inner discipline is going to be imperative here, because if you give the Stars 4 or 5 power plays a game and they even just go 1 for 5, 20% of the time over the course of an entire series where they're getting, 4 or 5 a game, 20% of 20, 5 power play goals might be enough to swing the series. 4 power play goals, excuse me. Math is hard sometimes. I had to take stats in college twice, intro to statistics twice. But with all of that said, the Oilers played well enough in game number 1 that I don't think they are facing an existential crisis. They need to clean up the mistakes, and they definitely need to find a 4th goal, because 4 goals is your magic number. But there's enough here to chew on to feel that they're in a reasonable position that they can beat Dallas 4 of the next 6 games. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the alarm bell, get a notification whenever new content goes live. Let me know, what are you concerned about with the Oilers going into game number 2 tonight? I will talk to you guys on Monday. If you're down here in the States like me, have a safe and fun Memorial Day weekend. Either way, regardless, until Monday, let's go Oilers.